extensive background in public, private, and nonprofit sectors to his role as deputy mayor. Born and raised in St. Paul, Williams has spent his career focused on creating partnerships and building community. Previously, he served as Senior Vice President of Field Strategies and Development for the Local Initiative Support Corporation. Williams spearheaded community development as a grant maker and lender. Promoted from LISC, Twin Cities Executive Director, to a national leadership role in 2006. Williams provided support to 30 major areas across the country, as well as managing a $75 million operating budget. After earning a bachelor's degree in government and philosophy from the St. John's University, Williams graduated from the University of Minnesota in 1987 with a master's in public affairs. He served as vice president and senior manager of fund distribution for the United Way of St. Paul area from 1989 through 1992 before starting a program officer with the Minneapolis and St. Paul Foundations. These positions provided Williams with the opportunity to hone his community development skills as he implemented grant-making initiatives aimed at reducing child poverty, neighborhood revitalization, economic development, and education. In addition to his work, William has held leadership positions in various community boards, including African American Leadership Forum, Family Housing Fund, the Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity, St. Paul Community Development Agenda Task Force, and Minnesota State's Arts Board. Let's welcome our MC for today, Deputy Mayor Paul Williams.
When I read the flyer and the articles about this series, I saw that I was listed as a first. Namely the first African-American deputy mayor. I actually did not know that. And I want to tell you what an honor it is, but I also have to tell you that two things actually I want to share about this. First, the mayor and I actually never talked about that. And we haven't talked about that to this day. I think that's a sign of true progress. I walked in on my first day and he kind of growled at me something about snow plowing. Which I've gotten the message very clearly. Snow plowing is job number one. But we never talked about that. And I do think that that's a true sign of progress. Secondly, the mayor and I actually had an opportunity to attend the Martin Luther King breakfast here a few weeks back. And Cory Booker, Mayor Cory Booker from Newark, New Jersey, was the speaker at that event, and he told a great story, and he used an analogy to tell the story about how his father, who was an older African-American gentleman who had worked very hard his whole life, basically said to Cory, using a baseball analogy, "You did not start at home plate. You did not start at first base. You started at third base, son. And as a matter of fact, it's everybody else that has gone before you that got you to that point." I thought that was such a good analogy for myself as well, who I was born in the early 60s and did not fight the fights that so many others have fought on my behalf. And some of the folks that I certainly think of in my own family, my grandfather, who was a black dentist on Selby and Dale and later on Grand Avenue in Lexington, who worked for so many years in St. Paul to establish credibility, to establish responsible practice, moved his dental practice to Grand and Lexington because he could, and wanted to make a statement that in fact a black dentist could be located on Grand Avenue and didn't have to be on Selby and Dale. I think of my father, who worked here in this very courthouse for 40 years, 20 years as a part-time public defender, another 20 years as a Ramsey County referee in family court. Worked his whole life to establish credibility to do the right thing. I think of other relatives. I think of other folks in the community who mentored me, who went before me. Yusefim Jenny, Mahmoud El-Khati, Earl Craig, Charmaine Chapman, Shirley Kaiser, Alfred Babington Johnson, Josie Johnson, who spoke here a few weeks back, Retha Clark King, Tony Carter, Bobby Hickman, Bill Wilson, and Willie Mae Wilson, all of whom went before me and really paved the way for me in many ways. So these folks did more than just pave the way. They, in fact, built, I think, the pathway. And I feel like in some ways I've had it relatively easy. So I didn't start at home plate with the bat on my shoulder. I actually went to third base. Those folks, some of them hit home runs, some of them hit singles, some of them stole a base or two. But in fact, they allowed me to really start at third base. And so I feel it's no coincidence that I'm here in the position that I'm in the work that I'm doing, because so many others really paved that way and created that set of expectations for me. So it's an honor for me to be in this position and to work alongside so many of you. Again, I'm just delighted. So I'm going to move us into our program. We're going to start with some music, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Ashika Churcher Bay is going to lead us in that song. Do I see Ashika? There she is.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out with the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever true to our native land.
Welcome to everyone. Actually, every year when I come to this event and sing that song, I am reminded that I wish I could sing. Because it's such a great song, and I just want to belt it out, and then I realize there are people in front of me, so I just really tone it down. So we should all be grateful for that. You know, proclamations get read all the time, but they have real significance. And, you know, it's a combination of a little bit of research, but mostly it's about an honor that we do the people who are in this proclamation. And as I was reading it, it actually heartened me to know that I know most of the people who are the first on this. And in fact, I think at one point, Bill, I'm sure I did some lit dropping for Councilmember Wilson at that time. It was part of my family history was politics in St. Paul. So I have a proclamation that is, sometimes they get a little bit perfunctory, but it really is meant in the spirit of true honor of the events that we have this month. So the resolution recognizing Black History Month 2012, celebrating first the African American leaders who paved the way in our community. Whereas Black History Month, as we know it today, started its month-long observance in 1976 to celebrate the African American people and to highlight the role African Americans have played in the development of medicine, politics, government, community leadership, science, business, religion, education, literature, theater, music, arts, sports, and many other areas of our civic and national culture. Whereas during this month, we recognize the courage and tenacity of many hardworking Americans whose legacies are woven into the history and fabric of our city and our nation, and honor the extraordinary achievements of African Americans and their essential role in shaping our community. Whereas during this year's observance of Black History Month, the City of St. Paul will recognize the pioneers in our midst by highlighting African American leaders who have paved the way in our community, including Debbie Montgomery, the first African American beat patrol officer in St. Paul, Tracy Williams Dillard, the CEO of the Spokesman Recorder, Minnesota's oldest minority-owned newspaper, Commissioner Tony Carter, the first African American Ramsey County Commissioner, Representative Rita Moran, the first African American legislator to represent a St. Paul district, Deputy Mayor Paul Williams, the first African American deputy mayor in St. Paul, and Bill Wilson, the first African American St. Paul City Council member and president. Whereas by sharing the stories of these historic firsts, we better understand the contributions of extraordinary men and women who have given their collective efforts, energy, and spirit to breaking down barriers and striving to create a city that ensures equal opportunity, economic security, and civil rights for all. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the St. Paul City Council recognizes February 2011 as Black History Month, celebrating first the African American leaders who paved the way in our community. And be it further resolved that the St. Paul City Council encourages all residents to join in recognizing the contributions and achievements of the extraordinary individuals whose stories of breaking down barriers will encourage future generations in St. Paul. Thank you very much.
I'm Victoria Reinhardt. I chair the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners, and like Kathy, I actually did try to sing, but given the fact that I'm recovering from a cold, only every other word I think came out, so I apologize to those that were around me. I have to tell you, not only is Commissioner Carter the first African-American Ramsey County Commissioner, as far as I know, she is the only one in the state of Minnesota. And in fact, of all the commissioners in the state of Minnesota, there are two commissioners of color. Both of them are on the Ramsey County Board. And I can tell you this also, that I think it was probably last year when we were singing, and we were singing up front, and Tony Carter started to sing, and it was like we just all kind of stopped and looked. Incredible, incredible voice. Anyhow, I am really pleased to be here today and to be able to read this proclamation. As Kathy said, this is something that we take very seriously at the county, at the city, and when we do the proclamation, they are truly heartfelt. And so I am here representing the entire county board and Ramsey County in our efforts to celebrate Black History Month. So I will read the proclamation. Whereas the legacy of Black History Month dates back to 1926, when historian and scholar Carter G. Woodson instituted a week-long celebration, which through the years evolved into a month-long celebration that was formally adopted in 1976 and nationally proclaimed by American presidents thereafter. And whereas this year, during Black History Month, as we head into the sesquicentennial of the Civil War, we recognize the historic role played by African Americans 150 years ago, and in particular note the sacrifices, struggles, and achievements of the Black Civil War era soldiers, including the 104 men who enlisted from Minnesota and joined with over 178,000 to form the regiments of the United States Colored Troops. And whereas going forward from their historic service, we recognize the people who followed and those who today continue to celebrate to breakthroughs in politics, technology, science, media, and education. They settled for nothing less than to strive for equality, opportunity, and respect for everyone. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners that the month of February is Black History Month in Ramsey County, and urge all Ramsey County employees and citizens to celebrate the history, inspiration, and influences of African American firsts and the leaders who paved the way in our community. And it's signed by myself as chair and Julie Kleinschmidt, County Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lantry and Commissioner Reinhardt. I seem to have misplaced my boss. That would be the mayor. This is not the first time this has happened in my first 7 weeks. But I want to read a proclamation from the mayor on behalf of the city of St. Paul. Whereas on February 11th, 1986, the United States Congress passed Law 99-244, designating February of 1986 as National Black History Month, and in 1976 this observance evolved into a month-long celebration. And whereas on February 28th, 1996, Senate Resolution 229 was issued commemorating Black History Month, and on February 16th, 2006, Senate Resolution 380 was issued celebrating Black History Month. And whereas Black history offers all Americans an occasion and opportunity to gain a fuller perspective of the contributions of Black Americans to our nation and to honor the African Americans who overcame injustice and inequality to achieve financial independence and the security of self-empowerment that comes with it. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King once said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. It bends toward justice, but here's the thing. It does not bend on its own. It bends because each of us in our own ways put our hand on that arc and we bend it in the direction of justice. Now therefore I, Christopher B. Coleman, Mayor of the City of St. Paul, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2011 to be Black History Month in the City of St. Paul. Signed, Christopher B. Coleman, Mayor. The quote from Dr. King that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice, and that it bends because each of us in our own ways put our hand on that arc and we bend it in the direction of justice, is powerful because that speaks to the importance of individual action. Sometimes it's easy to step back and get overwhelmed by it all and to say, I don't know what I can do about it. To say that maybe I'll just stand on the sidelines and let it happen, or somebody else will take care of that. But in fact, individual action matters. Your presence, your effort matters. And individual presence and individual effort matters. So it's my pleasure today to introduce someone who did more than their fair share for the city of St. Paul and who put tremendous individual effort and individual presence into the work of the city across many different dimensions, but certainly for the core city areas of St. Paul and certainly for my community, the African American community in St. Paul. William Lee Bill Wilson is the executive director and founder of the Higher Ground Academy Charter School in St. Paul. Higher Ground is a multicultural K-12 school of choice which opened on September 7th, 1999 and serves kindergarten through 9th grade students. A native of Evansville, Indiana, Bill came to St. Paul via Knoxville College in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1963 and worked at first on the Great Northern Railroad and later became employed as a research lab technician with 3M that same year. He worked at 3M until 1967, and in 1968 started the first of many assignments in the community, where he was the co-founder and first executive director of the Inner City Youth League, a nonprofit that works with low-income, at-risk youth in the city of St. Paul. In 1969, he was hired as the coordinator of intercultural programs at the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs at the University of Minnesota. He later received a Ford Foundation Fellowship to study at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, where he earned a joint bachelor's degree and a master's degree in education in 1974. In 1975, he was appointed commissioner of the Department of Human Rights by Governor Wendell Anderson, a position that he continued under Governor Rudy Perpich until 1979. In 1980, after having done all of that, he was first elected to the St. Paul City Council in a citywide election. He was successfully reelected several times and served on the council until 1993. In 1989, he was the president of the City Council and served in that position until he retired in 1993. He also served as the chairman of the St. Paul Housing and Redevelopment Authority, vice president of the St. Paul Port Authority, and several other positions at the municipal level. He is the recipient of many awards for his service to the community, including chair of the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Commission from 1985 to 1993. He received a certificate of appreciation from the St. Paul branch of NAACP. He received the William Bill Cosby Alumni Award for City Government Service from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst in 1983. And in 1994 was the recipient of a proclamation issued by Minnesota Governor Arne Carlson establishing May 21, 1994 as Bill Wilson Day in the state of Minnesota. He's married for 44 years to Willie Mae Wilson, the retired president and chief executive officer of the St. Paul Urban League. Is a father of a son and a daughter, and I can say grew up and lived right across the street from me, 2 blocks down on Lexington and Selby. So please welcome William Bill Wilson.
Paul, thank you very much for that fine introduction. And Councilmember Lantry not only dropped literature for me, but her father, Jerry, was one of my first supporters in that very, very tough first election. Serving in the city of St. Paul on the city council helped, I believe, shape the rest of my journey. Paul kind of outlined part of the journey. I grew out of the civil rights movement, and I like to believe that much of what I have done has been as a result of that, but the journey goes on. I can remember the first election to the city council. Share a few stories with you if you don't mind, if I can. As Paul said, it was a citywide election, and elections were held in the spring. So that says campaigns were run during the winter. And I appreciate everybody who got out there and tried to hammer, what do you call those? Iron? Lawn signs. Yeah, lawn signs that rebar into the Minnesota turf. It was a challenge. But as a citywide election, it gave me a chance to really see and know St. Paul in a different kind of way. Many wonderful neighborhoods and people that make up this fine city of neighborhoods. A city that distinguishes itself continually, and I'm proud to have had the honor of serving on this city council. I remember in my first campaign, that I had a friend on the council who was trying to help me get elected and was giving me advice on what to do. And I'm always open to advice. And he said, now, to tell you the truth, Bill, as you may know, no black person has ever been elected to city council. So that part of it, you got to keep quiet. Honestly, he said, when they get in the voting poll, you never know what they're going to do. So you play that part down. And I didn't know how to do that, and I guess I apparently did a pretty good job of it. I got elected. But there was some challenges along the way that is just part of growing, I guess. I remember my first League of Cities meeting in Duluth, and I was fresh to the election and from being elected, and so all the city council members go to this confab, and everybody learn about how to govern, I guess. And out of nowhere, as I walked back to my hotel, I saw a guy running toward me. And he was quite a distance away, and so it didn't make much difference. He could have been running it toward anybody. But the more I walked, the faster he ran, and finally he came across, and he started expressing racial epithets and saluting to the Ku Klux Klan. He had a knife in his hand. And I said, what a way to start. Fortunately, there were wonderful police officers not too far away, and I hailed them down and said, this guy is after me. I think he really is serious. And they arrested him and jailed him. And when I got back to St. Paul, the media was all over me. And the first question they asked me, and I'm usually unprepared for these kinds of questions, and I don't think anyone ever is. They said, do you think this was racially motivated? And my response was, I don't know what motivated him, but I was more motivated because he's in jail and I'm here. So, because there was also a tense time in the community. And so anything that we can do to relieve that kind of tension was important, but it just simply came out of my mouth. I didn't think about it. That's what I said. And I think it was about right, because it turns out that this guy, I later found out, was had mental problems, and he's off his drugs. He's off his medication. And so he was out of control. So I'm glad I handled that, responded the way I did with that. As I looked at my time on the council, many wonderful things happened, many wonderful things. But the most important thing to me, after about 6 months or so, I really realized that it was my job to serve the community, to make a difference in the time that I had. You know, elections every 2 years then, your time could be short. This has been extended to 4 years, but it was 2 years then, so you were in a hurry to get things done. Well, our community, that community was burdened with a lot of problems. And one of which was the infamous Dayton University Adult Entertainment District. And it was just struck me that no other community in the city had this kind of adult entertainment. And we looked at what the laws would allow to rid ourselves of that situation. The law had done all it could. And I said, we still have a job to do. And I started a one-man protest. I made a single sign and stood at the corner. And in time, as time went on, there were throngs of people who joined that campaign. And I remember the media again's response was, this is censorship. And we said, no, it's citizenship. Because what the law can't change, if it's wrong, then the people can. And so we changed it. So that corner today is revived. And wonderful things are going to happen. Continue to happen. I remember also that our community was burdened with, it was at the time crack cocaine and gangs were prominent in urban communities. And it was bothersome to see this problem, but it affected negatively so many people. It affected not only the people who lived in the neighborhood, but I also realized it affected the people who sold the drugs. And I took time to talk to some young people, wondering why would they choose a life like this? Of all the things to do, why do this? And these young people, 15, 16, 17 years old, and their answer stuck with me. Basically, they said, we don't have jobs. We can't get jobs. This is our job. And that struck me. And so I thought that maybe the solution on the other side of that is for every drug dealer, there must be a job somewhere. Because that's what young people are asking for. But the other part of that problem, not only the fact that it did terrible things to the neighborhood and undermined the integrity of the community, but these young men and some women were going to jail in large numbers. So their life was being worsened by a predicament they found themselves in. There was a war on drugs, but it was really a war on human beings. And no amount of law, changing of laws is going to change that because it was illegal. And I had the opportunity to step outside the box, so to speak, and go and look at what was done in a couple of other cities. And I went to Chicago, and they had a very aggressive program of arrest, prosecute, and prison. And I went to Miami, and they said we had a great program there. And essentially, they'd arrest and prosecute, put in prison, and burn down the drug houses. You'd come across the horizon along the highway, just see houses going up in flame. What a waste. Houses that ultimately people could live in. And so I decided that whatever program that we would shape here in St. Paul would be humane. So how do you do this and keep people out of jail and keep drugs out of the community, etc.? So we finally shaped a program, I think it's still around, called Force. And when I talked to then the police chief, I said, now let's be clear. From my perspective, it's to stop the drug traffic and the drug houses. It's not to arrest and imprison. And so we created essentially a program that disrupted drug trafficking. And fewer and fewer people went to jail, less and less drugs were sold. And I think we solved that part of the problem. Now the program is still around, it's still doing the same thing, and that's wonderful. Because I had another experience where I went and visited and volunteered at Stillwater Prison. And I was struck by the fact that the vast majority of people in Stillwater Prison that I was dealing with, African American men, they could not read. They literally could not read. And I thought back, these young people on the street selling drugs, they're the same people. They're just older or younger. And those guys couldn't read either. So it was a pipeline from school to prison. And we said they had to break that. Now, am I talking too long?
No.
Oh. Okay. Oh, it's water. Thank you. Usually I just get pushed off the stage. But it struck me that that was really about that the solution to drugs and poverty is truly education. Because a person who can't read can't very well figure things out. Somebody's telling them, and they're really the ones who get manipulated and told what to do, and they usually go do the wrong thing because they're the risk takers, and they end up in jail. So, as a part of my, I think, continued concern and journey, I decided that there was large numbers of children of color, particularly, who were not being educated. Saw that very clear. The effects of it are everywhere. It's called disparities. We did a report back in about what year was that? A couple of years after I left the council, on disparities in the workplace and education. And that kind of said, this is a problem that we need to look at seriously. Well, I continue to look at that, and lo and behold, today, almost 20 years later, the biggest problem the community is facing is disparities in education. It's always been, long been the case. So, and unfortunately, the idea was that it's black folks who can't learn. And they're the ones that cause this disparity. And Minnesota has one of the worst disparities in the nation. And that is unthoughtful. I mean, there's absolutely no reason that has to be. Not here in Minnesota. So it's a lot of negligence going on. Well, I agitated about changes, and I said, well, if you can't get other people to change it, what can you do about it? So we started a school. And for the purpose of educating, particularly African-American children of African descent. We said it's a Higher Ground Academy, Afrocentric, Minnesota's preeminent Afrocentric school. And either we were going to succeed or we were going to fail, but we set about succeeding. And we have, this school was recognized by U.S. News and World Report as one of the top high schools in the country. It can happen. And as Paul was saying earlier, it just takes each of us putting our hand on the problem and working with it. That's really what it takes. The lives that we lose because we don't do that can never be recovered. But we must save, going forward, the lives of our children. And it's through education that should happen. We have a new community emerging in St. Paul. And it is the East African community, particularly from Somalia. We have a lot of responsibility in that area. And as a friend reminded me, if we get it right, in the first 20 years, we'll have it right for the next 200. We are within that window of 20 years. It's time to get it right. 96% of the children in our school are East African children, and doing well. Come to us with a language other than English, master English, have a second language. All children, as a condition of graduating from the school, must be accepted into college. That's a condition. It's a known. The kids know that. And if they don't intend to go to college, they may as well just go to another school. It's that simple. Because there are standards that have to be set, and this is a standard. So those children who are going through that school now, they will be future leaders in this city, in the Twin Cities. We have the largest East African population in this country. What an opportunity. What an opportunity. So I challenge us to address that. And it's really appropriate that, that I'm speaking in part to human rights community. Because we have young people at that school who want to enter the workforce, who want to be part of government. And I have a young lady who is a graduate of my class. I teach a class at the school to keep me busy. Career exploration. To challenge young people as early as the 9th and 10th grades to identify careers. And this young lady has identified a career in law enforcement. And she has joined the, I think it's called the Explorers. And she's being mentored by a detective, inspector in the sheriff's department. When we looked at the literature for her to become an officer, police or with the sheriff, what I found was that she was going to have conflicts with her culture. Her culture says that she must wear a full-length skirt, a dress, and must wear a hijab. The rule said you must wear pants and you must wear a hat. And it kind of reminded me of the struggles that we had with getting the first female firefighters hired. We had to go and challenge all the rules because St. Paul didn't have any women firefighters. And we changed the rules to make them equitable and make them right, to find middle ground. And I think with that issue, we have middle ground to be found in this case too, because these young people bring a culture and traditions that are different from ours, but not in conflict. They're just different. And I only hope and trust that we can find a way to navigate that change so that a person doesn't have to rid themselves of their traditions, to deculturate themselves in order to be inculturated, to open up doors so that, in fact, this young lady can be a police officer or a sheriff, wear a skirt, but also wear pants under the skirt, wear the hijab, but they had on the hijab. We can do that. That's middle ground. So this could come to us later as a challenge. I just opened that discussion up today. And there are many young people who have some values that are different than ours, but they're good values. And I would just ask if Istar, Mir, would you stand up, Istar, please? Do you mind? Okay. Now, Istar's in the 10th grade now. She's be graduating from our school in about 2 years. She's going to go to college, and one day she should be a law enforcement officer. In Ramsey County or the city of St. Paul, and if each of us would put our hands on this problem, we can solve it. Thank you very much.
In wrapping up, I mentioned earlier that in my first 7 weeks I have occasionally misplaced my boss. Well, each time I have misplaced him, I in fact have found him. And once again today, I have found him. I also said, though, about my boss that as I mentioned earlier, when he hired me and when we were talking about this position, and in the ensuing weeks since I've started, we never talked about the fact that I was the first African American deputy mayor, and I think that's significant. And I thank him for that. I think it's a sign of how far we've come in a lot of ways. But I also can say that it's a sign of his confidence in me that I had the right skills, that race doesn't become a part of the conversation even. And I feel that's really genuine. So please join me in welcoming Mayor Chris Coleman for a few remarks.
Thanks, Paul. And Bill, thank you for your incredible leadership over the years. It's so good to hear you, to hear some of those stories, and be reminded of the challenges that we have faced together, that we have walked through, that we have worked on, and your leadership has always inspired me. But I think it's telling that you have gone from the battles of that you fought on the council when crime was destroying our neighborhoods, destroying our young men and women in those neighborhoods. Crack was rampant. These houses were destroying the quality of life in our communities. It's not that we have eliminated those, but the challenges that we face today are nothing compared to that ravage of that awful time in our community. But what's interesting is that you have gone into what I think is the human rights battle of our time, and that is educating every one of our children, having every one of our children have the resources and the talents that they need to be successful in life, from the time that they are born to the time that they get into their career, supporting them, surrounding them, engaging them, making sure that not one of those children slips through the cracks. That is the human rights battle of our time. 2 years ago when I was out in Washington, D.C. For the inaugural of the president, it was wonderful because everywhere I went and had every conversation almost, I was talking to someone and they said, I marched with Martin. Now I am here to see an African American sworn in as president. But they were so proud of that fact, and some of them weren't marching too good anymore because they were getting up there in age. But they were there to see that president inaugurated. But when I think about that phrase, I marched with Martin, I say, what would Martin be marching for now? He would be marching to make sure that damn achievement gap that we have in this community was closed. Not lessened, not decreased by some small percentage, but closed once and for all. And I love that phrase that you had. You said, if we get it right, in the first 20 years, it will be right for the next 200. And I think we can do that in this community. All of our resources, all of our talent around the promised neighborhoods, around our out-of-school time program, the work that we're doing with the school district, with our charter schools, like Higher Ground, is dedicated to the fact that if we want true equality in this community, if we want true opportunity in this community, it starts with making sure that that child from the day that they are born have the support and the resources that are necessary to succeed. And we don't let them slip through the cracks. And we don't pat ourselves on the back because now instead of 46% of our kids reading at grade level, 49% of our kids are reading at grade level. It is unacceptable that any of our children, let alone over 50% of them, aren't graduating from high school on time or at all, aren't reading at grade level, aren't performing math at grade level, aren't preparing themselves to enter a 21st century workforce where their competition is not somebody in Minneapolis, their competition is somebody in Singapore or Shanghai or in Brazil or across the globe. If you ever dreamed that you could have marched with Martin, then march for education today. If you ever dreamed that you could have been there in '63 on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, then stand up on the steps of our school buildings and in our rec centers and our libraries and stand up on behalf of our children. That will be the fulfillment of Martin's dream. That will be the human rights battle that we will fight and we will win. When every one of our children walks out from Higher Ground or Highland Park or Humboldt High School and they walk into the doors of a college, and then they walk out of that college into the workforce, that's when we'll have achieved equality. Until then, we got a lot of marching to do. We got a lot of marching, but we are in the direction that we need to go in. We're getting there with Bill's leadership, Paul's leadership, leadership of so many of you in this room. Keep marching. We'll get there, but we got a long ways to go. Thanks.
Heard the crowd, heard the snow.